Greetings, Cap fans, and welcome to another episode of the Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast. This is episode number 20, and I am your host, Rick Verbanis. I am joined, as always, by my partner, Bob Lucius. Bob, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Rick, and good morning to all the listeners out there. This is another exciting conversation I can't wait to dive into.
Yeah, because we are doing a reaction podcast to the Falcon and Winter Soldier, episode number 2, which was titled Star Spangled Man. And this was a really cool episode that focused a lot on learning more about John Walker, the new Captain America. So who better to have us join on the podcast than Dave Witham? Hi, Dave. Welcome to the show.
Hi, guys. Nice to meet you and face-to-face, so to speak, for the first time.
Yes, absolutely. And for those who are don't know Dave, so Dave is a fairly regular person on our Captain America Comic Book Fans Facebook group. And so Dave's a big Cap fan as well, but he also has his own Facebook group dedicated to John Walker, and it is U.S. Agent, part cop, part soldier, all hero. And so you could check out that Facebook group if you want to get a little bit more information on John Walker. So who better to have here talk about it. So thanks for joining us, Dave.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
So let's talk about this episode. I'd like to kind of, just throw it out there and get everybody's reactions to this. My thoughts, it was a great second episode building off of the first story where they introduced at the very end that there is a new Captain America, and introducing the Flag Smashers, introducing the issues going on separately behind Bucky and behind Sam's personal lives. And now we finally have Sam and Bucky together in the first episode, and it was a lot of fun. It was kind of like like a Lethal Weapon kind of duo, where the guys were bickering with each other. I had a lot of fun with this one.
There was certainly a lot to unpack in it. It crammed an awful lot into 45, 50 minutes. I mean, you've got the whole kind of thing with Bucky's PTSD from episode 1 carries over. Finally get a really good look at John Walker and who exactly he is. And we've got some new characters in there, Isaiah Bradley and Lamar Hoskins. We learn a bit more about the Flag Smashers. It was a great episode. If episode 1 kind of set the scene, I think episode 2 was really went a long way to seal the deal.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I love the dynamics. I think the way that they're sort of building the dynamics, building on the dynamics that we've seen in previous films between Sam and Bucky, I think are really interesting. And I know we're going to get into this, but I also think the dynamics they're building between Sam and Bucky and John and Lamar are interesting as well. And so, man, maybe we should just dive into that.
Yeah, and by the way, sorry, I think this goes without saying, but spoiler warning: if you haven't watched episode 2, we're going to start getting into some details about the episode, so you may want to watch that. And also, if you haven't listened yet to our reaction to the first episode, you can check us out on episode 18, where we give our reaction to that. So check those out. I do agree that the dynamic between the two is a lot of fun. And of course, it starts off right away with Bucky coming up to Sam and saying, the first words out of his mouth are, you shouldn't give up the shield. And Sam wasn't going to have any of it. And so it was interesting trying to see where Bucky was coming from. And we got a real good glimpse into it when they had to go and meet with Dr. Christina Raymer, and got to see a little bit of conversation between, what's the issue between the two. And I guess the reason that, Dr. Raymer insisted on that, because before she was going to release She wanted to see what was going to happen, like who was she releasing him to, and wanted to see, what that dynamic was with Sam. And so they delved a little bit into that. And I don't know about you guys, but I thought it was really touching when we had Bucky basically, he said, he was really upset about him giving up the shield. And he said, Steve believed in you, he trusted you. And then he went on to say, maybe he was wrong about you. And if he was wrong about you, maybe he was wrong about me. And that was and his voice cracked when he said that. And I thought that was a real telling sign of why this is so important to him, that Sam continued the legacy. It was because it was the trust that Steve gave him, and he didn't want to have any doubt in his mind about that.
It was a really powerful moment, for sure. I mean, not just in the first episode. Bucky's so stoic and powerful and silent, and it's like the walls came crashing down. He finally tells us how he feels, and it was really quite poignant to see it.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but I was a little disappointed in Sam's reaction. Sam paused and he said, are you done? And then he went and said, you and Steve would never get this, but, I did what I thought was right. And, that's that's the problem, was there's still an issue there where they're not being empathetic. They're not trying to listen. They're not trying to see the other side. They're just still trying to just state their case. And so there's still that wall there in between the two of them.
Absolutely. I mean, Bucky really opened his heart to Sam in that moment, and Sam just kind of let him bleed. It must have been so tough for him to say what he said. And, Sam kind of made it about himself in the end.
Yeah, I think, both of them, it's clear after the first and second episode that both of these guys have a little bit of the hero's journey to still to tread, right? And both of them have issues that they're going to have to deal with. And I think part of this journey, part of these, the solving of these issues is going to be, it's going to depend on the other guy. Yeah, and I think that sort of initial team up that we see in that first mission, as you said, it's a very lethal weapon sort of dynamic with the bickering back and forth. I think it's going to be integral to sort of resolving those deep seated issues that both of them are struggling with.
Yeah, and talk about that bickering back and forth, right? That initial scene where the two of them are together, and I loved a couple of the lines that Sam said. He says, "What did you want me to do? Call America and tell them I want the shield back?" I thought that was pretty funny. And then, of course, the big three, right? When he says, "What? What are the big three?" Well, androids, aliens, and wizards. And there's no such thing as wizards. And then, well, I read The Hobbit back in 1937 when it came out. And I love Sam's reaction was, well, when he talked about Doctor Strange, well, Sorcerer is just a wizard without a hat. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I love that scene. I mean, I love, we're going to jump off the sort of the little back and forth dynamic, but I also love the Bucky jumping out of the airplane without a parachute. A bit of an homage there. So I thought that was awesome. Didn't end up quite as graceful as usually Steve Rogers made it look, but yeah, good stuff.
And then Red Wing was there to record the whole thing, and Sam made sure to tell him. All right, so let's get to the opening, right? So the opening, very much like the first episode, was a very solemn opening where, because the first episode, Sam is looking at the shield, and he's treating it with respect and putting it in the case that Steve gave him. And in the first episode, the second episode, the opening is, it starts with the zipper, and it's a very solemn moment as John Walker is unzipping the case that's holding his Captain America uniform. And so he's obviously has a lot of respect for that. What did you guys think of the opening scene? Dave, what did you think of how John Walker was was, just immediately, this is the first time viewers get to see him. And what did you think of the way they introduced him?
I think it was really important to show the more insecure, kind of sensitive, aware side of John Walker, and I think it was important that they did it at that point because we saw later in the episode, and I'm sure we're going to see as the season goes along, that John is very confident, capable, arrogant. He can be somewhat obnoxious, a little bit insufferable. But in that one scene, we see immediately he's just a normal guy. He's filled with insecurities. He's aware of the expectations. We can see he's a decent guy, which is something which doesn't always come across in the comic books for those who are aware of them. And I think it was a really good scene. We appreciate straight away just what a weight this legacy is about to inherit is to him.
Yeah, and I think it's a great scene as well, that locker room scene, because it also introduces Lamar at the same time. And it's great to see that sort of that dynamic between them. It comes across that they are very, very close, and they have this shared history.
Well, and it also introduces another character, right? It introduces this woman. We don't know if his girlfriend, if it's his wife. They basically had a little, pinky hand kiss type of thing that seemed to be their thing. And they said, love you. So I don't know, it could be a sister, but I got the impression it was a girlfriend or maybe a wife or fiance. I don't know. I didn't see a ring. So that's going to be interesting as far as how that plays out. And when we're talking about the comic book version of John Walker, now we all know John, from the comics, has been described as, I think when we were talking about with George's, the artist, in episode 17, mildly racist, right? That's something that, could be described as far as John. So I found it interesting that this love interest, and we'll just say girlfriend right now, that she didn't appear to be Caucasian. Was this their way of trying to, overcome that comic book description of John Walker and show that he's not that character?
I think it's probably part of it. I mean, the producers have spoken a little bit about John before he made his full debut, if you will, and they were quite keen to stress that there was about 50% of the character from the comic books that they wanted to leave behind, and the main motivation for that was that they didn't want, they wanted John Walker in the show to appear to be worthy of the role of Captain America, and they didn't feel they could make the guy in the comic books who was, as you correctly say, mildly racist, entirely obnoxious, somewhat selfish, self-serving, a bit of a glory hound to begin with. They wanted a guy who is different to Steve Rogers, but when you look at him, you think, well, yeah, he's a good guy, he's qualified, he's capable. So I don't know whether this was intentional. I mean, it took me by surprise because in the comics, John Walker has never really had a significant other. So to include one in the show, I'm really interested to see where it's going. So yeah, it may have been part of that of that plan on behalf of the show writers and the producers to give us a more likable and sympathetic John Walker.
Yeah, and let's talk about that a little bit as far as he, throughout his scenes, he was more likable. He seemed to be a little bit, more down to earth as far as someone you could, like and appreciate. Like that opening scene when he's talking with Good Morning America. Those were good, but we also clearly saw that he wasn't Steve, right? I mean, when he gave the little advice that he gave to Sam and Bucky at the end, he was like, get out, stay out of my way. That certainly wasn't a Steve type of comment, right? there were a couple of other things there too to show that he was different, and but certainly not to the extent of the comic book version of John Walker. So I also want to talk about the question of racism. That something is something that we've heard is going to be part of this show, is bringing up some topics. So I thought it was really interesting when Sam and Bucky were in Baltimore, right, and they're going to visit Isaiah Bradley, and he the little kid says, "Hey, it's Black Falcon." And it was kind of a callback to the 1970s, when everything was Black Panther, Black Vulcan, Black Lightning, Black Goliath, and Sam was like, what, just because of black, the Black Falcon. And I loved that they brought that up.
Yeah, I thought that was a cool little scene, and it was spot on. Really, it was funny, but it was important as well.
Yeah, and then of course we get introduced to Isaiah, and we get introduced to the character and to the idea that there were other super soldiers after Steve. I don't think that was really discussed ever before, so we're introduced to that, and it doesn't appear that Isaiah was treated fairly by the government. And so for anybody out there who isn't aware of the comic books on Isaiah, and we gave it away, his last name's Bradley, so you can research that if you want. But there was a miniseries called The Truth, where the story was basically revealed, and so I'm sure we'll learn a little bit more about Isaiah as the series goes on. At least I hope so. And he was portrayed by Carl Lumbly, which is a great actor, and that was an intense scene. And for those who Carl's been in so many different things over the years since the late 70s, but for comic book fans, you would know him as the voice of Jean Jeans, the Martian Manhunter, in the various animated series. And then he played Jean Jean's father in the Supergirl series. So if you're trying to place his face, that's where he was. But I hope we learn more about Isaiah as the series goes on.
Yeah, I got to tell you, Rick, I mean, I follow, I know this upsets you every time I say it, but, I follow some other Facebook groups.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. And the interest in Isaiah and just like the excitement around that appearance and the appearance of his grandson in that scene. I mean, there's the excitement is palpable among a lot of comic book readers. And I do hope, I don't know if we'll see Isaiah again or hear about Isaiah again in this series, but I do hope we see more of that backstory, and particularly that story of which is, a sort of a retconning, but the story about Bucky and Isaiah going face to face in Korea back in 51 on the peninsula. Yeah. It'd be great if we see more of that, at least in the comics. I think there's a lot of excitement and interest in that character and that whole sort of mythos.
Yeah, and I know there's people assume that was his grandson, and that was maybe Elijah, who is a character in the Marvel universe and comics, who goes on to be a hero, and that follows in his grandfather's footsteps. So that could very well have been him, and maybe it's setting up for a future Disney Plus story, where they get a whole bunch of young characters together and build a team. That would be interesting.
Didn't Lumley also star in the superhero B movie Mantis from, you might remember the adverts in the back of the old 90s comics. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but I could have sworn he was in that as well.
Yes, he was. Yeah, good call. So let's talk about the Flag Smashers and the Power Broker. So we find out that there's somebody out there called the Power Broker who has sent some armed men to go back and chase down these revolutionary Flag Smashers, who all seem to be having the super soldier serum in them. But maybe they're not. Maybe it is. And from the comics, just this is another difference here, right? So in the comics, the Power Broker was the one that originally gave John Walker and Lamar Hoskins their power, and this was back before they became Captain America and Battlestar. And John Walker was a character called the Super Patriot. And so it looks like we're kind of mixing some things up here, right? So we have the in the comics, the villain Flag Smasher who leads a group called Ultimatum. And then on the other side, we have the Power Broker. So now it looks like Ultimatum is called the Flag Smashers, and there really isn't, one true leader like in the comics. And they're now getting amped up from the Power Broker, but it doesn't look like it was done, on the up and up, right? Because one of the leaders of the Flag Smashers, Carly Morgenthau, she gets on her phone a text that says, "You took what was mine. I will find you and kill you." And we can assume that was the Power Broker. So that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, and it's going to be really interesting to see where it goes, because as you've stated, John Walker and Lamar in the comic books received their powers from the Power Broker, and it's probably important to note at this point that the suggestion so far from the season is that neither John nor Lamar actually have any superpowers at this point. I mean, we saw the battle on top of a truck where, for as long as John's got his shield, he's pretty capable. He's good at putting up a fight. Then when he loses his shield to save his partner, he seems to find himself completely outclassed by, these half a dozen superpowered individuals. So I'm really interested to see where we go with the Power Broker and how and whether it ties into Walker and Lamar.
Yeah. And well, he even, when he was being interviewed, John said, I don't have super strength, right? He says, I don't have any super gadgets. I don't have super strength. So he came out and said that. So let's get to our predictions then. What, how do you, Dave, how do you see the series, give us a prediction on how you see something happening in this series.
Well, I think the first thing I'd say is, obviously we've discussed John's girlfriend, wife, whatever she is. Anyone who's read the comics might think that she should maybe be looking over her shoulder in the episodes ahead. And, that could be quite significant at some point in the series.
Yeah. How about you, Bob?
Yeah, it never ends well when you're a superhero with loved ones and you go on Good Morning America and show the world your face and everybody knows your name. So yeah, I don't think that's going to end well for her.
Yeah, and I'll add on to this prediction that John is forced with he loses a loved one, and because of that, he wasn't able to do anything about it. He was helpless. So he's going to revert to injecting himself with something from the Power Broker to use the strength, almost like the story of Batman and Venom, with Bane, where Batman was forced to take on the Venom, and I'm thinking that's what's going to happen with John Walker. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I'm also gonna, if I could add on to that, and I think there's going to be a little bit of a blending of the mythos here, and we're going to see that has a destabilizing effect on him.
Yeah, he may go a little crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it probably ties into Walker's character as we've seen him so far. He's not Steve Rogers. He's very much a soldier, and he's a really good soldier. But he doesn't see Captain America as a calling. He sees it as, and he kind of said it in the beginning of the show, the job. So he's going to be a Captain America who sees the role of Captain America as a mission. And as a soldier, you're either an asset to him or you're in his way, which is kind of what we saw at the end of the episode where, they could have done a big close up with a load of foreshadowing where it's kind of like, get out of my way. You're either with him or you're against him. You're either a tool he can use or you're a hazard or an obstacle in the way.
Lots of good stuff. Yeah. It was a great episode, and certainly looking forward to the next one, which we're going to get into Zemo. So that's going to be fun too. Can't wait for that. And I'm going to predict that's when we see Sharon.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and one last thing. Rest in peace, Red Wing.
Yes, rest in peace, Red Wing. But I think Red Wing might be back.
Yeah, he'll be back.
I hope those files are backed up, right?
Yeah. All right, Dave. Thanks so much for joining us. We had a lot of fun and enjoyed having you on the podcast. We'll see you on the Facebook pages, and we'll touch back with you and see how these predictions come true.
Pleasure to be here, guys. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Absolutely. Well, Bob, one thing I failed to mention that I thought was interesting too was they introduced the Global Repatriatism Council, also referred to as GRC. So that's who John and Lamar work for, and they talked about how that since after the blip, that all those people, it's basically trying to get them Social Security numbers and get them back into the living, and that's when Sam makes an interesting comment about how it doesn't always work out for other people, and then the Flag Smashers, we had Carly refer to the GRC, which is the Global Repatriatism Council. So they look at them as the bad guys, right? So I'm wondering if this is the MCU's version of the Commission.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they haven't really delved too deeply into this, but it's an intriguing sort of concept, and there's clear just from sort of the chatter of what's going on in the show that there are major problems with large numbers of people, right? 50% of the world's population suddenly reappearing, and difficulties with employment and housing and healthcare, and that there are these sort of encampments set up to house these people all over Europe, and so this has caused a major disruption in life as we know it, or as they know it, in this world. And so it's intriguing that this global repatriators, the GRC has been established to sort of kind of smooth this, but those sort of global organizations with that sort of reach and power and resources, it never ends well, right? And so that there's something going on here behind the scenes that may not turn out the way that everyone hoped.
Yeah, right. Because one of the things that Carly had said too was that the people are back in power, I think is how she rephrased it. And that made me think, so, if 50% of the population was blipped and they came back, those who were in power that left, when they come back, certainly are going to want to stay in power, right? And then you have the people that filled that void in those 5 years. And so there's going to be some conflict.
Right.
But I do.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rick.
No, but I do think this is the MCU's version of the Commission, right? Yeah. The ones that made the decision to force Steve Rogers to do one thing or quit, and he quit, and then they replaced him, and so that seems to be, an extension of what's going on in the MCU with the whole blip, where they had to extend more to what the Commission was going to do, and I think that's what the GRC is.
Yeah. Well, and I think your point about sort of the former leaders coming back and finding their cushy leadership positions filled. That remember WandaVision, right? And what happened to Sword, and how the leadership of that thing shifted, and who took over, and what resulted from that. And so I think that's an interesting concept. I think, these sorts of major global organizations are also ripe for sort of, Hydra to get involved in. So, it'll be really interesting to see what is really going on with this GRC, who's really running the show, and what their sort of vision is, what they're really up to.
Yep. Maybe we'll get a little bit more into that. Yeah. And maybe we'll also get a little bit more into the backstory of Dr. Raymer, right? Or do you think we've seen the last of her because there's no more reason for Bucky to interact with her, or are we going to see some more? Because they drop things like Cap said, "Oh yeah, I did some field ops back in the day, with her."
Yeah.
And he referred to her as her first name. So do you think we're going to see any more of her?
I think we are. I think she's an interesting character, and she really has the ability, to get, I think, at the nub of the problem, and that's a little bit scary, right? Because she can get in people's heads. Has a certain Faustus quality to her. Maybe we haven't seen that really come to bloom yet, but I do think we'll see more of her. I hope so.
I would like to. Because I enjoy her character, and I enjoy the way the actress is portraying her. So that'd be cool.
Yeah, and I'm really excited about that closing scene with Zemo and where that is going to lead, because it's going to be interesting if Sam and Bucky have to sort of rely on Zemo's help, and how that unfolds.
Almost kind of like a Silence of the Lambs, right? We've got Clarice going to visit,
Hannibal, right? Yeah,
Hannibal, and so now we've got Bucky going to visit Zemo. So that will be interesting.
Yeah,
and for those who again are new to love the MCU but are new to comics, if you want to get a crash course on any of these characters, highly recommend you go back and look at some previous podcasts we've done in the last few months. If you want to learn more about the Falcon, so check out episode 14, because we take a deep dive into Sam Wilson's background in the comics, his origins and his different versions of the origins and retcons and things like that. If you want to learn more about Flag Smasher in the comic books, highly recommend you check out episode 10, because that's Flag Smasher's origin, and it's completely different, a lot different, I should say, from the MCU version, where the MCU version seems to be more of Ultimatum rather than this one particular Kai. And if you don't know what Ultimatum is, check out episode 10. And then got to get to Winter Soldier, right? We just had come out episode 19, which was the first 3 issues of the 6-part Winter Soldier story, which is the origin of Winter Soldier. And then coming up this week, we have the second part. So we have part 2 of our 2-part series, and this will be Winter Soldier 4, 5, and 6. So we highly recommend you check out those, which are episodes 19 and 21, so that you can learn more about the comic book background of Winter Soldier.
Yeah, lots of good advice there, Rick. And there's a lot of threads to pull on this series for those who want to dive deeper into some of these characters. So definitely got to listen to those podcasts.
Yep. All right. So, and just to give a heads up, after this week's podcast, which is 21, which is, like I said, Winter Soldier Part 2, we are going to talk in episode 23 with one of the artists behind the Winter Soldier series, or Winter Soldier story, I should say, which is Mike Perkins. And so we're looking forward to chatting with him on his time with the Winter Soldier and also his time on Captain America, the comic. So that'll be really cool. All right. Well, Bob, as always, it's been fun wrapping Cap with you.
Yeah, this has been a great episode. It was great talking to Dave, and I'm so excited. Looking forward to that episode number 3.
Excellent. All right. Well, I'm Rick Verbanis. He's Bob Lucius, and you've been listening to the Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast.